Hey, welcome. It is time once again for the GenWealth Radio Hour, and on our live stream video version, the What's Happening segment starts things off for us as they do each week. Glad to have you along. My name is Scott Inman, a GenWealth financial advisor here in our West Little Rock office where we do our recordings each and every week, and my co-host in the co-hosting chair today, GenWealth co-founder John Shrewsbury, getting ready to dive into some What's Happening segments, which, if you're not familiar with, is basically our take on some things that are making news in the financial world and sometimes just being stupid. We've got a stupid one a little bit later on in this segment. We're going to hammer that one. There's an Instagram reel talking about the 401k being a lousy investment.
They just don't know. They just don't know. Yeah. You have to excuse ignorance. That's all you can do.
It's something. It's going to be...
This is the segment where we've got an opinion and we're not afraid to use it. You know, I think that's what we ought to start calling it.
Yeah, it's what's our take on what's happening.
That's right.
And we've got that one coming up a little bit later on, so that's a little bit of a tease. It's going to be a few minutes away. It'll be our third subject today. But our first one is based on a bank rate article that came out recently. That here's the headline: 28% of working women are leaving free money on the table that could set back their retirement. This is an interesting article to me because it really dives into the attitudes when it comes to investing that are different between women and men, and apparently that's causing women to be hesitant to contribute. 28% of working women have not saved for retirement in the past year. And that's a lower share compared to a lower share of men. Men are investing more. And I think the big thing is, and the article brings it up, that those women are leaving money on the table in the form of employer matches. And that's the obvious thing, right, that they're going to set their retirement back a little bit. But, John, when you think about the attitudes here, it dives in and kind of talks about that men are typically confident and in many cases overly confident in their investing prowess. Oh, yeah. And women are more cautious and risk aware, right, but that causes them to pull back on those decisions. Now, I did not see in this article one mention of whether we were talking about married women or all women or just single women. It seemed to be geared towards single women, but we don't know. But either way, it's a really interesting dynamic that I think my experience, and I think you would say this as well, in the client meeting room, that is often the case, that men come in pretty confident. They've been kind of handling the decision-making. And women, and this is in a married couple, of course, women are a little bit more hesitant, and they need some hand-holding and understanding, of, at least on a basic level, of what they are getting into. And I think it's a great balance, honestly. But if you're doing it alone, one end of that spectrum can really be a problem.
Yeah, if you think about the dynamic of this, it is incredibly complex, and you know how this all kind of interplays and what the psychology is between men and women on this, and really how that plays out in the savings rate. But the point of the article is that women are leaving money on the table. I'd be really interested to know how many men are leaving money on the table, because only about 50% of the people participate in their 401k plans. And so, there are things there that are really deep psychologically that you've got to kind of explore. And we do that a lot in the meeting rooms where we talk to people about taking advantage of the company match. When you think about if there is a dollar for dollar, or even let's take the much more typical 50 cent on the dollar company match of what you put into your 401k. That, Scott, is a 50% return on your money before it's ever invested. Now, the critics might say, well, yeah, but it's got this vesting schedule on it. It's not really your money for 5 years and all of that. And all of that may be true depending on the plan that you're in. But let's not think short term. Let's think long term, because that's really how you win the long term game. If you're going to play the short term game, you may win short term, but you most certainly aren't going to win long term. And when you give up a 50% return on your money, then that's just foolhardy before it's ever invested. So if you think about the risk factor here, you could put it in a fixed account and still get a 50% return on your money plus the interest that is earning. So I think that there is a lack of understanding, a lack of education to some degree on the part of people that men and women that are not taking advantage of the match in a 401k plan.
You think it also points out the need for women financial advisors, which we certainly have a few here
Yes.
at GenWealth, and I think that's important. If sometimes a woman wants a woman to guide her through that.
Well, and that has been something that Janet and I, obviously I have a female business partner.
Yeah.
When we founded GenWealth, that was one of the things that we said that we wanted to attack was this disparity between the knowledge and the participation and the education of females in the equation. Because here's what's happening. We do see this on a fairly regular basis. The man drives the bus on all of the financial decisions. The woman's kind of along for the ride. And then all of a sudden the man dies and the woman is lost and doesn't know what to do, didn't really participate in the meetings with the financial advisor, doesn't really understand what, and they freeze. They are literally petrified by the responsibility that is then heaped upon them on top of the grief that they have. And, I think that for whatever reason, when we started this segment, I remember this old John Mellencamp song. The line goes, Martha don't need no stinking man to tell her anything about her decisions, or something like that. But the idea here is that sometimes men say, hey, I've got this retirement thing taken care of. We just need your paycheck to come home. And that may be the family decision that's done. But if there is a death or a divorce or what have you, there are consequences to those decisions. And I don't think that's really thought through oftentimes with the full picture in mind.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out, too, that women live longer statistically than men, so they're going to need more retirement income. They're going to probably spend more on healthcare costs. So whether you're going it alone or as a part of a married couple, a woman's role in contributing to a retirement account is vital. I've seen it time and time again in the meeting room when a couple comes in late in life about to work through their retirement plans, maybe 5 or 10 years out. They're in that retirement red zone, and both spouses have consistently contributed to their retirement plans, gotten that match, invested in growth investments. They are going to be in good shape if they've done that for decades.
Yeah, they have a much healthier retirement. They have a much easier time doing the things that they want to do in addition to the things that they need to do. It takes two to actually drive a retirement for two people.
All right, good stuff on that one. Also staying with bank rate for our next subject, the headline, 2025 Retirement Savings Report, Social Security anxiety is at an all-time high. And I get it. Social Security, didn't know this until, well, I wasn't thinking about it, but it just turned 90 this year. 90 years of Social Security, and more Americans than ever are worried they won't receive the benefits they've been promised. And there is a real threat to the amount of the benefit that you're promised. There's not going, I think we should start there. It's not going to go away. Right, you're not going to not get a benefit, but if nothing changes, we've talked about this time and time again with the Social Security Trust Fund, there are predictions that it will be depleted, run out of money, no surplus in 2032, 2033. I think 33 is the official current report, but that varies. It's gone back and forth. COVID sliced a year off of that, and then we got a year back. But in any event, we're just a few years away from having that problem if nothing is done. And I thought there was a great comment in here by somebody representing Bankrate. They said, we talk about it all the time, that we think politicians are going to do the right thing at the end of the time frame here. In the midnight hour, they're going to make a change that's going to save Social Security from going under as far as the trust fund goes. But he made a great point. The longer they delay, the harder that fix is going to be.
Yeah, and let's camp out on a couple of things that you said there, Scott, because I think it would be real easy for people to just kind of maybe gloss over it or not catch it. One is that Social Security is not going to go away. Now, I just, basically flew in the face of a lot of opinions out there, because all you have to do is go to the coffee shop and they'll tell you, yep, it's going to run out of money and I'm not going to have anything there. So I'm going to claim mine as quick as I possibly can, so at least I get something. That is not how the system works. The system is set up on a pay-as-you-go basis, and what's happening is that people who are working are continuing to contribute. So there will be enough cash flow, if you will, to support about 80% of the benefits. So what should a prudent person do? Well, if you want to be really conservative about it, you get your projection on Social Security and then you reduce it by 20%. And therefore, if the worst case scenario happens, you've planned for it. You have not set yourself up for failure. You've actually set yourself up for the expectation that you have. Now, the expectation of it going away, I don't think that makes any sense. I don't think that there is a reasonable thought process that would say that Social Security is going to vanish. So if you would accept that premise, then I think you can go at this from a conservative standpoint and say, okay, let's, in our financial planning, let's plan for 20% less Social Security and drive that bus forward. Scott, I think that oftentimes people feel anxiety about things they don't understand. Mm-hmm. And when they don't understand the dynamic of how Social Security works, then they're not going to understand that it will continue to be there. Now, let's talk about the politicians for a second. Yes, I do think that the longer they kick the can down the road, the harder it's going to be, because the closer you get to that deadline, the more you've got to pull it back from the precipice, if you think about it that way. But I also know that politicians want one thing, and that is to be reelected. And if they vote against Social Security in any way, shape, form, or fashion, then they're probably not going to get reelected. So I think that at the end of the day, they're going to do the right thing. They will fix it. It just may be, by the nth degree that they actually do that.
I want to, before we leave this topic, talk about something else in that article. There was a survey breaking down the age groups when they are asked how reliant on Social Security will you be to pay your living expenses. And I actually think this is a positive. The highest was baby boomers at 72%. They're already retired in most cases, right? And so they're not going to have to worry about Social Security being cut. Gen X, that's me, 61% say they're going to be relying on Social Security, but it precipitously went down the younger the group. Millennials said 45%, and Gen Z was at 37%. And I actually think that's a good thing, because it is correlated directly to their retirement savings, because Gen Z thinks 28% think that their retirement savings is right on track, and that goes down as you get older. So I think there's a mentality shift that the younger generations are understanding. Maybe they don't understand correctly that Social Security is not going to go away, but they aren't counting on it. They're saving for retirement.
Yeah, and they need to be saving for retirement. Yeah. The power of compound interest and the time value of money kick in there, and it clearly is to their advantage to be putting money away, whether Social Security has a full benefit, a partial benefit, or a no benefit.
Yeah, and putting that money away in a 401k is a good thing, despite what this next guy says. Listen to this Instagram reel on a 401k is a horrible product.
Babe, why did you cash out your 401k?
So in 2019, I cashed out over $100,000 out of my 401k to invest in real estate. And that's because 401ks are the single greatest scam that anybody can invest in. Now, for 99% of people, if you have no discipline financially and you don't want to invest your own money, for sure, get your employer a match. That's fine. But what 401ks are designed for is the U.S. government literally said, most people don't have enough discipline to actively invest money on their own. So we're going to create a program that forces people to get into equities, aka the stock market. And so the 401k is designed for you to not pay tax right now and then draw on it later at 65, where you're supposed to be paying less tax. But the issue is, I'm going to be really, really rich at 65 years old, and I'm going to be in a higher tax bracket. So you are literally having no benefit to having a 401k because you have zero control with that capital that's inside the vehicle of the 401k. So look, I'm not your financial advisor. I'm not giving financial advice. If you want to ride that 401k, do it. I'm just saying that if you want to understand how to actively invest your money in real estate and businesses and stuff like that, it's much better to pay the 10% pre-penalty to go ahead and get that money out of the 401k to where you can control it and actually grow it and do something with it. Most people are just sitting, like, you're wasting money in a 401k.
Ooh, so much with that, John, we could go to. The first thing I'll say is do not listen to him when it comes to taking the 10% penalty to invest in real estate. I'm a big fan of investing in real estate, but do it with other money. Save money outside of your 401k to get into real estate or non-retirement money. It doesn't make any sense to take a 10% hit just to go do something else with it. That's the first thing. I know you got a bunch.
Yeah, well, let me just say that he is correct. He is not a financial advisor for very good reason, because he's an idiot. That's just all there is to it. What is he, 25, 30 years old, first of all?
I don't know.
You think about the power of compounding that money over time inside a tax-deferred vehicle.
Yep.
He clearly doesn't understand what he's talking about. Secondly, he's telling people to pull money out of their 401k and take the 10% penalty. We can't do that because, number one, you got to quit your job to get the money out of the 401k. Then if you quit your job, you do take the 10% penalty, but you also take the taxes out of it as well. That's a huge hit on the capital that you've got in there. Scott, it is very clear to me that real estate, because of its nature, is probably best used in after-tax accounts as opposed to 401k plans. So putting it into an after-tax account maybe makes sense, but use that with other money, as you said. The 401k plan, the other thing that just really kind of galled me about that whole thing was he is obviously oblivious to the concept of a Roth 401k.
Yeah, right.
And that he claims that you're not in control of your money in the market. Well, you are in control of the money in terms of the various investments that you have it in, and you're not forced into buying equities.
Right.
That's the other fallacy of this. That advice is worth exactly what you paid for it, which is absolutely nothing, and will lead you into poverty if you continue to do that. That's not saying there's anything wrong with investing in real estate. I invest in real estate. You invest in real estate. We all recommend people to invest in real estate, but not in deference to the 401k plan. And by the way, what he missed was the first thing that we talked about is that match.
Yep.
Missing that match in the 401k plan is absolutely devastating to your financial future.
He mentions the tax brackets and that he's going to be rich at 65 and be in a higher tax bracket. That is not the situation for 90% of the United States.
That's right.
So it is actually the opposite. You're going to be in a lower tax bracket in retirement in most cases. Now, if you are in a higher tax bracket, you still have gotten those pre-tax deferrals. Where you make your 401k contributions is important. Like what John mentioned, there are I would say a lot more than ever, 401k has a Roth 401k option. So if you are in a position where you don't need the tax break now, you can dump that money into the Roth 401k and you've got tax-free income in retirement. There are also potential strategies to convert to Roth before you get to retirement if needed. It is definitely workable. It is not like you stick that money in there and you're stuck. The zero control part really galled me because you're not forced into equities. You have some options to be, when you're in that 401k, some investment options. And then if you do sever employment, and especially when you retire, and in most cases, if you get the 59.5, you'll have the option to roll that over to an IRA. That is not zero control. That is full control. When you're in the IRA, you have the investment universe at your disposal.
Take it for whatever it's worth.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Hopefully get more of those. I like those are the easy ones to really get.
Those
on.
are layups.
Hey, that's it for our What's Happening segment. The Get Ready for the Future show starts right now.
You've been sold the idea that financial independence is all about some number on your account statement, or even worse, that you don't qualify because of where you started out. That's just not true. It's not about some well-kept secret of the wealthy. It's about finding the right information and knowing how to apply it. On the Get Ready for the Future show, we're answering your questions so you can start making real financial change today. The journey to true financial independence begins right here, and it starts with you.
Our show is here to help people discover, protect, and share true financial independence. That's the mission statement at GenWealth Financial Advisors, and it's why we are on the air with the Get Ready for the Future show, once again answering your questions about money, retirement, investments, whatever you would like to know about. We want to hear from you. My name is Scott Inman, John Shrewsbury in the co-hosting chair today. We've got a few questions lined up, so let's get right to it. Anthony from Greenbrier is first up today. We've always filed our taxes ourselves, but things are getting more complicated. How do we know when to hire a pro? Anthony, that's a great question. For most Americans, if you can walk through that on your own, it saves you a little bit of money because the average tax preparer is probably going to be $300 to $500 and up to file those taxes. So it's great if you can get away with not having to pay that. And there is so much software available now that's free and available. And obviously Anthony has been taking advantage of that, but now he's thinking things are getting more complicated. So the first question I think I'd have for you, Anthony, is why? What's going on? Because if you've started a business, or if you became self-employed recently, or even if you just have some side income that comes in not via a W-2 income, but it's 1099, there are a lot of deductions available to you that you may not be on top of. So I think maybe if you have rental properties, that's another thing, John, I would think about here, or even stock options through an employer. There's a lot that could be the reasons behind getting more complicated for Anthony, but I'm going to say generally here that if Anthony thinks it's getting more complicated and it's out of his hands, it's probably time to hire a pro.
Yeah, if you feel like that your confidence is going down as your complexity is going up, that's when you need professional help. Now, let me also create a little bit of a stir here, Scott. Not that I'm known for doing such, but get somebody that doesn't drive looking in the rear view mirror. You need a tax professional, CPA, enrolled agent, you name it. There's a lot of qualified people to do this, but they need to be helping you to plan forward, meaning that, yes, you can find just about anybody that can help you comply with the federal law that says you have to file a tax return accurately. They get all your stuff, they plug it into the software, and you sign it and file it, and everything is good. But if you are paying taxes now and then you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you'll keep paying taxes in the future. You're probably not going to avoid paying taxes. The game would be, though, to pay as little as you are legally required to pay. That's where forward-looking tax planning comes into play. And what you want to think about is not what you pay this year or next year in terms of your return, but how much are you going to pay in taxes over the course of your life? Because that is what really does affect your ultimate net worth, your ultimate estate, and all of those things. Taxes is one of the biggest expenses that you could have. You've got to be able to look forward and manage that properly. So not only is it important that you comply with the filing apparatus that is out there and say, okay, I want to be sure that I'm accurate and I'm compliant with the filing requirements, but I also want to be sure that I look ahead and make smart decisions so I can pay less taxes in the future.
I'll take that a step further just a little bit, too. I think it's important not only, Anthony, to get a CPA, but also a financial advisor if you don't have one. And if you do have one, make sure that those two people talk to one another. I have a client that had a situation where they had some real estate that they were depreciating as a business expense, a deductible expense on their taxes, and that had reached its conclusion. And so they were no longer going to have that in 2026 while they had it for many prior years in 2025. And the client called me and said, my CPA would like to talk to you about maybe increasing withholdings on the retirement distributions that we're sending out from the IRA. And I'm going to tell you, it surprised me a little bit because that's not common.
No, it is not common. And that is the nexus that has to exist if you're going to reach financial independence. Your professionals have got to talk to each other. This would be like, I don't know, your general practitioner and your specialist not talking to one another about a condition that you've got.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to have that conversation. And that has got to be a productive conversation that is not fraught with this person's ego or that person's ego. The professionals have got to come together in terms of what is in the best interest of the client to try to get down the road, not necessarily who's right and who's wrong. Scott, I remember, and this is not meant to be an indictment of the profession by any stretch of the imagination, but I remember many years ago, I had a client that was an executive of a corporation. He was a president of a corporation in my hometown of El Dorado. He had been working there and continued to work there and maxed out his 401k, but he also started a consulting business. And that consulting business was a completely separate business. Well, I recommended to him that he set up a retirement plan in that consulting business because he had a lot of cash flow and he wanted to save more money for retirement. His CPA went nuts. Oh, you can't do that. And we had this biggest round. We literally had to call the IRS, and the CPA was embarrassed in front of the client and the IRS when the IRS told him, yes, you can do that. The IRA, or the retirement plan for the business and the retirement plan for the corporation are separate, and the contribution limits do not interfere with one another. So, it's one of those things that if you're not in the game all the time of personal finance, then you may not know what's going on. You've got to find people that are competent in that to be very specific at what you're doing, because CPA does not necessarily mean they know about personal finance. CPA means they are a certified public accountant and they know accounting. They may not know personal finance law.
And in many cases, they are overworked, right?
We know very much overworked.
There is a CPA shortage in the United States, and so they are just trying to get those tax returns in. They're just juggling all of that work. So it's often very good to get a financial advisor involved to have that two-way conversation so you can save on taxes. And, Anthony's talking about tax situation getting more complicated. We don't know if he's probably still in his pre-retirement years, but it gets way more complicated in a different way when you reach retirement, because your income sources are going to change, right? And the taxation on those different income sources are different than what you have been dealing with in some cases in your pre-retirement work years. So we believe taxes are one of the most biggest controllable expenses in retirement. So proactive planning is how you take control of that. Hey, if you want more free info about retirement investments and your money, we want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You just go to YouTube and search for GenWealth Financial Advisors. There's lots of great stuff there, including past, get ready for the future shows that you can take part in and hear us answer questions like this one. Evie is next via text message. I'm 62 with no debt and about $900,000 saved. Can I afford to retire next year, or should I wait? Well, Evie, the retirement age, the right retirement age should not be a guess. It is more geared around an income plan, okay? So you're not telling us very much about what your income needs are, other than you're off to a great start with no debt. So it should be relatively low. But beyond what you need in retirement, we want to talk about what you want. But first, what are your monthly expenses? If you need $4,000 a month, that looks different than if you need $6,500 a month. So with no debt, I think she's off to a great start, John, but we need to look at some other things before we can tell Evie if she can retire at 62 with $900,000.
Yeah, $900,000 will probably produce $35,000 a year, somewhere in that neighborhood, $36,000 a year in income just on the $900,000. And then I'm assuming Evie has Social Security. Didn't mention a pension at all, so we're going to assume that doesn't exist. If the combination of Social Security and $35,000 a year, if the combination of those two things gets you to a spot where you can pay your expenses and have some money left over to have some fun with, then that is probably not a bad idea. But I think that you do bring up a great point, Scott. It is really not about an age. It is about taking a look at your expenses, working through that, understanding what you can actually generate. Evie also doesn't talk about anything to do with maybe a spouse involved. So we're going to assume that she's single.
Right.
I think the big question here for Evie is going to not necessarily be whether you can retire and replace your income. That is a question. But how about health care? Because that age of 62, you're 3 years away from being eligible for Medicare. And I know that there are subsidies for certain income levels, but when you reach that income level where those subsidies run out, the exchange rates on the rate, I should say the rates on the health insurance exchange just explode to about $1,000–1,500 a month, depending on the type of plan that you have.
Yeah.
So healthcare is a big surprise for a lot of people there, Scott.
Yeah, and at 62, I think Social Security timing matters here too. You may already know this, but you can claim Social Security at your age, so you would be able to get some guaranteed income around your retirement, but your benefit is permanently reduced up to 30% less than your full retirement age benefit. And let me be very clear, your full retirement age benefit is if you were born 1960 or later, that it's at 67 years old. For everybody born 1960 or later, but that doesn't mean that is your biggest benefit. So there's even a potential to get a larger benefit if you delay claiming your Social Security all the way up to age 70, and it increases between 67 and 70 at about 8% per year. So there's a great benefit in making the right Social Security decisions for yourself, and that needs to be part of the equation too. And then the other thing I think about here is the investment strategy with that $900,000. I think a lot of people either leave their pre-retirement investment strategy in place when they retire, don't touch it, don't change it, don't make a plan for it, or they get very, very conservative and they put money, maybe even all of it or the majority of it, in cash, and because they feel like, and here's the most common thing I hear, I'm getting older, I don't have time to make it up if the market goes down. And I think both of those are not good ideas when it comes to your investment strategy in retirement. Your investment strategy in retirement, John, should center around battling sequence of return risk, which basically means, what if the market does go down? In the bucket of money that you are taking from today, that is not a good idea. But it doesn't mean you hide all of your money in cash.
No, there is a balance there, Scott, without a doubt. And the bucketing strategy is something that we have used, tried and true, for a number of years at GenWealth, and does work in all kinds of markets. It keeps you from liquidating shares at the wrong time. The wrong time is when the market goes down. And if you don't liquidate when the market goes down, you have solved one of the biggest problems in investing in retirement. Scott, I want to go back to the heart of Evie's question. She said, can I afford to retire next year, or should I wait? Implied in that question is that she has the ability to wait. Here's what I would ask. Evie, what are you retiring to? What is it that you're going to do in retirement? If you go home and sit down, I would venture to say that your health is going to deteriorate. That's going to be a problem. So if you are going to do something else in retirement, is that going to generate any income? And if you do that for a period of time, can you allow your retirement savings to continue to grow as you make that income coming in from the alternate job that you have? I think there's a lot of issues here, Scott, that Evie's got to look at. And I think that Evie is a great icon, if you will, for people who are approaching retirement to understand that there's way more to it than just the mathematics.
Yeah. This is our question of the week because it is a great question, Evie. We're going to send you a Get Ready for the Future Show tumbler for being named the question of the week. We just need you to email it. Email us to show@getreadyforthefuture.com to claim it, and we'll send you that Get Ready for the Future Show tumbler. Our next question is from Lynn in Bryant. And he writes, we're trying to decide between annuitizing part of our IRA or keeping it invested. What are the trade-offs? All right, Lynn, we're going to get into that. So annuitization, there's a lot to dig through right here. So people get, and I don't know whether this is Lynn, people get annuitization and annuity sometimes combined and mixed, and they're not exactly always the same thing. But annuitization is basically he is going to hand over trade some of his money or all of his money or whatever he's thinking about doing here to an insurance company, and in exchange they're going to give him a guaranteed lifetime income. But it does take away the benefit of passing any lump sum on to your heirs or taking any of that back. It is an irrevocable decision.
So let's be sure that we're clear here.
Yep.
What Scott just described is annuitization. It is not necessarily an annuity, because there are all kinds of different annuities. There are all flavors of ice cream. There's all kinds of flavors of annuities. So annuitization is that exchange. You're buying a pension is what you're doing. Just think of it that way, that you're taking that lump sum of money, whatever that is, and trading it to the insurance company, as Scott has accurately said, for that lifetime income payment. When you die, that income payment stops. The insurance company knows that the actuarial tables, they understand all of this type of thing, and they are not going to come out on the short end of the stick. They're going to basically say, you know what, we're going to take this big pool of people, and we're going to guarantee a certain amount of income on a certain amount of dollars, and some people are going to die early, and some people are going to live a long time, and we're still going to come out. So annuitization is not something that we normally recommend to people, especially on a lifetime basis. Now, what we've talked about there is one form of an annuity. A completely different form of annuity would allow your money to continue to be invested in your choice of investments and would continue to grow on a tax-deferred basis, but would also guarantee you a stream of income off of that income, that capital that is invested in that annuity, and would allow for a death benefit that if something happened to you, the corpus of that annuity, the principal of that annuity would be there to pass on to your heirs.
Yeah, the way I look at it in those type of annuities is you still have an investment product, whether it is a fixed annuity where it is just earning interest, or it could be all the way to the other side of the fence of a variable annuity where you're actually invested in market-like funds, but then you have a guaranteed income rider that sits on top of that, and the insurance company is going to give you a certain payment for life off of that, but all of this is still happening underneath that, as opposed to annuitization where you're handing over that lump sum never to get it back. So, as John's accurately described, there still is a death benefit on the account value in most cases, and those annuities can be very useful. But before, Lynn, you decide on annuitization or an annuity where you do keep the account value, or keeping it invested with no link to guaranteed income or insurance companies, I would say you need to walk through the Ready to Retire process. And that is highly valuable to determining whether you need an annuity or you do not need an annuity. And if you do need an annuity, how much do you need to put into annuity? Because there are trade-offs in all of this.
Right.
And I think one of the things I think about is, in most cases, the guaranteed income check you get is not ever going to go up. It can. Yeah, there is a possibility in some of the products that you can get a raise, but you need to plan on getting a flat payment with that guaranteed income. So you have to have some assets out of that, outside of that annuity, John, to be able to provide for cost of living adjustments.
Absolutely. And let me be sure that Mona, the compliance lady, doesn't barge in on us and
I
send
saw
us,
her out there. She's roaming around.
She is. She's
looking in the window.
She's listening and going, "Are you going to do it? Are you going to do it?" So here we go. You ready?
Yeah.
Annuities are complex products, and they're not necessarily right for everybody. They may contain fees and charges and things of that nature. You need to sit down with a professional and understand and walk through the details. Don't just take anything that somebody says at face value, especially something that you hear on the radio, even if it comes from us.
Yeah.
The part of the process that we use here at GenWealth is evaluating whether or not you need an annuity. How do we do that? Well, we look at what your income need is. What is your basic income need to cover your regular everyday expenses? If you have enough guaranteed income in the form of a pension and Social Security, then you probably don't even need an annuity contract. But if you have a gap there that would not be met by those guaranteed income sources that you do have, then you might want to explore what an annuity benefit could be for you. There's all kinds out there. That's where your investment professional sits down and helps you to walk through that and understand it. It is a very important decision, Scott, not one to be taken lightly, but what you want to have is a situation where when you retire that you have got all of your living expenses, your basic living expenses, not your discretionary income, not the things that you want to go and spend wild money on or anything of that nature, but your basic living expenses. Think about food, clothing, transportation, shelter, taxes, insurance, things of that nature. You want those needs met with guaranteed income. And if you don't have enough guaranteed income, that is a classic example of where an annuity could be a benefit to you.
Lynn, I would recommend walking through the GenWealth Ready to Retire process. Anyone interested in that can call 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You can also send an email to info@getreadyforthefuture.com to book your first complimentary appointment with a GenWealth financial advisor, and really a team of advisors you'll likely get to. And that will be just a discussion of your goals. We'll ask you to bring in a few documents to help us kind of talk about our approach to your retirement income planning. And then at the end of that meeting, you can decide if we're a good fit for you. Last question of the show today. Brian from Little Rock. We give to our church every year. Is there a better way to structure that giving as we approach retirement? Yes, there is, Brian. We work with clients all the time in this realm, because here's the reality. When you step into retirement, we know most people do not have any way to itemize from a tax perspective any longer. They are taking a standard deduction. So the giving to the church is not really any value if you're doing it with after-tax dollars. But what you can do is use your IRA, if it is in an IRA, I should point out, because of 401k, 403b, those plans do not have the capability to do this. But if it is in an IRA, you can submit what is called a qualified charitable distribution, QCD for short. So if you think about the money in your IRA is pre-tax, and when it comes to you, it is going to be taxed at ordinary income tax rates, right? So you're going to have to pay taxes on those dollars. But if you don't need all of that, and you want to divert some of those to your church in the form of a qualified charitable distribution, it will be a tax-free contribution to your church. It does have to go directly to your church, and your church has to be a qualified charity, which most churches are, but then you don't have to worry about getting taxed on those dollars, which is a tax benefit to you, and it's a huge benefit to the church, John, because you're able to give more.
Yeah, and I think it is important, Scott, that we point out that you become eligible for a qualified charitable distribution at age 70 and a half.
Yep.
So 70 and a half is the magic age, and then it benefits you more when you hit RMD age, which is 73 or 75, depending on when you were born. The required minimum distribution can be made through a QCD to the church, and you don't have to worry about that being additional taxable income to you if that is a problem in the math of your income structure. So that is clearly something I think that a lot of people need to think about, is the qualified charitable distribution once you reach age 70 and a half. But there's another method that you can execute on this. This one is a little bit, as the old folks would say, around by Laura's house to get to the benefit, but it is a way to do this. It is called a donor advised fund.
Yeah, so when you think about a donor advised fund, this is set up really to be a long-term way to continue to give charitable contributions over a long period of time. But you can make a large charitable contribution in a single year and take the full tax deduction for it immediately, and then recommend grants to your church and other organizations. Now, what you're really doing with the donor advised fund is you are handing that money over not to come back to you. So it is going to go into a third-party fund managed potentially by a financial firm, and then you are able to direct those dollars as you see fit. This strategy works especially well in high-income years, a year with a large Roth conversion or a business sale or significant investment gains, when your deduction is most valuable. And the assets inside of the donor advised fund can also be invested and grow tax-free, meaning your original contribution can generate even more for the causes you care about over time. So there is a great option there with the donor advised fund. Takes a little bit, as John has already mentioned, a little bit more steps to set up than a QCD, because the QCD is really a rather simple form, but for a simple form of making that contribution. But I do think it's important to point out, when you work with a financial advisor, they can help you do this, and there are other benefits to it as well. Going back to the QCD real quickly, I can tell you a quick story, as I have a few seconds to wrap up, but of some clients that I have that are a little bit more constrained. They don't have a whole lot of assets. Their budget is tight. They're already tithing to their church. We brought up the idea of using the QCD to tithe, meaning there, as we've already talked about, that money is going to go directly to their church and they will not be taxed on it. Rather than go to them, it goes to the church, so they don't pay the taxes on their distribution. It is helping us to lower the distribution they need from their IRAs, because they're not needing as much after-tax dollars to give to their church. Long story short, we were able to save them several $100s a month on their income, because we used the QCD instead of having the money go to them and then go to their church. So there's a way to save money and also give more money to your church. Lots of options, but as we hear the final bell ring, it's always important to work with a financial advisor to facilitate those charitable contributions.
Scott, when I stop and think about, a show and what our final thoughts are and things of that nature, I always think about the complexity of all of these questions that we deal with. Everybody has a specific situation that they're dealing with, and most of the time there's some complexity to it. What the advantage of working with a financial advisor is that the financial advisor can provide clarity and comfort. They can talk to you in a language that you understand. They can clear away all of the fog of the jargon and the financial speak that is out there and understand clearly what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And if we understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish, then we can work backwards to actually affect your steps today to be sure that that outcome that you're shooting for actually does happen. That's the planning process. And I think that anything short of doing it that way is just taking a guess. And that's not what you want to do to be financially independent.
Yeah, so I want to use my final thought to tell you again how to walk through the GenWealth Ready to Retire process, which takes all of these things that we get week in and week out from questions on the show and considers them and puts them into a written plan for you. Call 866-653-PLAN right now, 866-653-7526 to begin walking through the Ready to Retire process, or send us an email to info@getreadyforthefuture.com. And that's all the time we have for this week's show. Thanks for joining us again for the GenWealth Radio Hour and the Get Ready for the Future show. And if you want to get in on the action next week, here's how to do it. Text or leave a voicemail at this number, 501-381-5228. We hope to see you again next week.
The GenWealth financial team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and GenWealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.